on in his Chicago accent for 30 minutes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nathan.
Alrighty.
Joel, I love you. You know that, right?
So, hey guys, I think most of you saw me when I came up in March. So since then we had the sampling in June, and since June we've been here. Me and Brock have been here since July 14th, staying across from Betty and Becky's. Shocker. Staying there for the past 3-4 weeks, and we're going to be here for another week to 2 weeks. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an update, mostly just of what we talked about. But as far as just before we get too far into anything, as far as results go, we're not going to be talking anymore about whether fates of fish or things like that, just because we want to get all the data possible before we really start commenting on those things, make sure that we're not pushing ideas when they're a little premature. We want to make sure we get all our data in. And
is the new machine working better than the old machine?
I mean, it's working. It's working enough to get us tracks on fish. Whether it's totally better in terms of getting more range or not, kind of difficult to say.
Are you at least finding fish?
Oh yeah, we're finding fish. Yeah. But yeah, just to kind of run through, this was all on the newsletter, so I'll just go over it kind of quick. But the biggest thing that we saw in June with the 10 fish that we caught was compared to what Dan was seeing the year before, the fish were moving a lot more after they're caught. It was kind of something that he was noticing that after they're tagged, they would just kind of swim off a little bit, and then they'd sit in one spot for about 3 days, and then they'd kind of take off. What we saw in that June period, that wasn't the case at all, almost. Any of the fish that, out of 10 fish, one died, and we found it floating. The other 9, they didn't seem to do that. A few fish kind of hung out. Most of them were caught in the mouth of Beacon, pretty much. All at night, mostly fishing banks with the alewife bite on F18s and some hit sticks sometimes. But for the most part, after they were caught and they're released, they took off. We had a few that hung out in that area that stayed around for a couple weeks, or not a couple weeks, but a couple days. But a lot of the fish actually ended up going north. We kept finding them progressively going north, and they were staying in the back of coves a bit longer than we thought they would be. A couple fish ended up being way in the back of Becky's. One fish in particular was way in the back of Becky's, almost to the no wake buoys, and that was like midday. Then there's some other fish that took on up way upriver. We had one fish that had stuck around Beacon, moved up to about Hickory. We didn't see it for a while, and then we found it all the way around the bend at like R34. So I mean, they were moving quite a bit. Yeah, we had a couple fish that we caught with John Hughes, and we were in the Blackwater for that. Those fish traveled like 8 miles in 2 days. They hauled butt. They were all the way up by John's house. You guys know how long that drive is.
Roanoke Riverside.
He said they were moving up the Blackwater. So.
And they're caught
Upper end of
Blackwater, like
Magnum area.
yeah.
They went further
Toward Bull Run.
I found a fish near Christmas Island 2 days after it was caught way up the Blackwater. It had literally traveled 8 miles in 2 days.
How big was that fish?
That fish was, I want to say
26, 27?
26, yeah, 26 and a half.
So that average size is gonna live this time of year in that water. Basically, we're gonna get what?
That was one individual fish. And that was an individual case. As far as which size of fish are typically surviving or not, that's not something we're talking about right now, just because we don't have the data set up and actually analyzed to make those kinds of claims. But that fish in particular was 26, and it did seem to survive that time. Since then, for this, yep.
I'm sorry, do you know how deep he was when he got him up? I mean, a lot of that was a variable, right?
Probably.
Whether they're gonna live.
It's a factor, yeah. I think that one was probably, we were all using top water, so the fish had to have come up pretty
It
shallow.
was cooler water when you were doing that.
Yeah,
First 10.
the first 10 top water is about 83 at the beginning of the period. There's a couple days that are moved up to about 84, 85 towards the end of the week. Since then, water temperatures have been higher. It's been 85 to 87, 88 in some spots. But then we'd have that second week, or no, the second week was here, it was the week of the 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there. That was a really wet, rainy week this past July. Temperatures dropped a couple degrees for that week. So it's kind of interesting just how all that played into things.
Nathan, I have
Yeah.
a question back here. We tried to push this to the very end of kind of the Alewife bite, because we requested him to come down as late as possible and still get in on that kind of surface action. So it was right after that first real hot warm-up we had in June. So the temperatures had been a lot cooler, and they came in at the end of it, right when the temperatures shot up. And then he asked about, well, it says 70 degrees up there, and that's what temperatures the fish went to after they were caught.
Yeah.
He's got, those transmitters have a temperature sensor on them, so when they were caught, even though they were caught in warmer water, they went back down deeper to rest.
Which point?
Yeah, so they were, of these fish that were caught in June, they're all getting picked up about 10, 15 feet of water. Mostly with the F-18s, they sit about 10 feet when they're being pulled real slow. But yeah, most of them, and it's kind of been an ongoing trend of fish that we're seeing that are surviving. They're sitting in about 19 degrees Celsius water, which for us is, they're sitting right under the thermocline. And it's been pretty consistent all year so far. It's sitting right between 20, 25. You'll hit 75 degrees, about 25 feet, 25, or 20 feet, 25 feet, it'll drop to about 70. It's been pretty consistent. It fluctuates obviously a couple of degrees, different spots, but those fish are just hanging out right under the thermocline. And they're kind of going slow, not really going too fast, but we'll have fish that as soon as they've been caught, they start moving. We caught a 31-inch fish 2 days ago in Betty's in the afternoon, and by 8 o'clock, it was at the condos. They will move. They will move quick. And when we do find one, but we are finding ones that are dying. So that's kind of the main thing where we're like, we're not putting any numbers out because we don't know exactly what that proportion is. But the ones that are dying, they're hitting the bottom, very bottom. For us, we see that as 14.5 degrees Celsius coming up on our receiver. You have to get to that's 58 degree water. You have to be on the bottom in 130, 140 foot of water to get that cold. We're not even seeing fish on the graph go that low. So that's kind of how we're using our equipment to make those decisions. But like I said, still a lot going on.
Are most of the fish traveling a lot?
Most of them, yeah. Almost. So we caught, as of today, we have tagged 32 fish. We tagged 2 this afternoon. There's a 28 and a half and a 29. Those fish will probably stick around a couple of days, but of the 30 other fish that we've caught, they can be hard to find sometimes. We've had total 40 fish tagged. We're going to tag another 8 within the next 2 weeks, and then we'll be done for this sampling period. But we'll look around. We'll look around for all the different tags that could be around in the area. Most of them are moving south. And it's kind of like this a seasonal trend. Fish are going to be moving towards Bull Run, Craddock Creek, probably by September. that kind of time frame. But we are seeing them shift down that way. They've been harder to find up in Roanoke past couple weeks, but there are still fish here, obviously. But
What techniques are you using to catch them now?
we're exclusively jig fishing. We used a little bit of spoons, but we had 2 spoons, and then we lost them the first 2 days we used them. But we caught a fish on them. We caught a fish on one of them. But we were in over 100 foot of water. So, but Brock ripped one up, and it broke off right at the boat, and then he put the other one on and got a fish, and then the next day hung it in a tree. So then we're out of spoons, so we had to get Dr. Crane. He's up this weekend. He brought us a couple more spoons so we can try it again.
Those 8-inch spoons.
No, we're using the Castmaster 1-ounce spoon, so they're only like this big.
Okay.
But they're flashy. They work. They're good. They're good enough for eating, according to a striper. Just one treble. I think they're a size 2.
But are you seeing that those trebles are damaging the fish at all?
Well, I'll put it this way. Almost all of the fish, except for one of John Hughes's fish, were on trebles in June, and we only had one fish die, and it wasn't. It was a 26.5-inch fish that was caught in Beacon, and that fish released really nicely, really clean. Didn't have any issues sitting on the top or anything, and it just up and died. We found it the next day. We had a couple fish in that time getting the treble hooks off, and one hook would come off, and then another hook's back into the belly of the fish, and it's doing all this stuff, and then we put the fish back in, and it's just spinning around, and then goes down. We're like, that fish is dead. He's dead. He's not coming back. Took off. Don't even know where it went. He's still out there moving. I think we ended up finding it like a couple of days later, but all these, it's really strange because you'll see a fish, you put him back, and you're like, there's no way he's going to make it. And then you end up finding a fish that you're like, he should have been fine, took off. That's the one that died. It's really kind of hard to tell just from a release perspective how a fish is gonna make it. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Any other questions? I think that's my time.
Question, just, I mostly troll, and when you're looking at a striper versus, say, a largemouth bass, as far as, I caught a fairly decent sized largemouth bass trolling in the depth. I usually troll between 18 and 20 feet, somewhere in there. Does anybody know the survival rate versus a largemouth versus a striper? Is it any different, or is it about the same?
It's probably gonna be different.
Different?
Yeah, because the largemouth are more tolerable than the
Okay.
little water.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
still a chance of mortality of either one, but in general, largemouth are gonna do better because the warm water is not as bad.
Okay.
They're part of the sunfish family, right?
Yeah, bass, a largemouth can live in 80-degree water. He won't like it, but he can live there. A striper absolutely cannot.
Okay.
Those largemouth been trained to be released.
And when will you be back next year? When do you finish up?
Right. So we have about another week or 2 to go.
And then do you have dates confirmed for next year yet?
So we still have one more trip this year. We haven't confirmed what dates exactly, but we're going to be coming back in October.
Okay.
Probably either it's probably going to be right when the temperature starts to drop.
Okay.
That's probably going to be a cue, and then we'll probably try and do a little bit more night fishing, a little bit of jig if they're still happening. We're still making those decisions now. But
So stay tuned to the newsletter, right?
How long are you gonna track the fish forward?
So after we catch a fish, we will track it for at least 3 days, if not more. Within 3 days, we've been pretty confident we can get a mortality or not kind of indication. And really how that works is we catch the fish, we release it either right after we release it if it's like the last fish of the day, or a couple hours later if we're still catching them or still seeing fish, we'll go and track them. So today is about an hour and a half after we caught and released the 2 fish. We tracked them, found them in a different spot, and made that mark, and then we'll keep coming the next 2 days.
What's the prize one of us catches a tag fish?
That's a good question. Some of you have seen my fish board. It's a nice V board I made out of PVC decking. It's really nice. A lot of people like it. I might be making them one or two more of those, so keep that in mind. It's got a really cool striper sticker on it, really nice. So we'll talk about that. So far, no one has called me to tell me that they've found one. So if you do, my phone number's on the tag. And so you know, if you catch that fish has probably been about. So I'll end my little thing before we go back on this one story. February we came and I caught a 32-inch fish just inside Bridgewater off a light. We were doing a first tagging study, looking at a tagging method and attaching it to the fish. Long story short, that didn't work at all. But we surgically implanted a tag on that fish to go with the external method to see if that works in terms of keeping that tag on the fish. We found out before we put the fish back in the water that wasn't going to work. We released that fish. 5 weeks later, Dan got a text from a guide up by the bridge that he caught it again, and it had the stitches on the side. And we're like, that's 1 in a million. How is that going to happen? That's crazy. We come back in June. Towards the end of the week, me and Dan are looking for fish up the Roanoke side. Come up right in front of the ramp at Oak Grove. I heard this beep that's really weird. It doesn't sound like all the other tags that we've been punted in. And I'm like, who else is putting tags in this lake other than me? And like, this is weird. And then we go and we look at, sure enough, that old tag that should have died, the battery should have died 2 months before. It was that fish that we surgically implanted the tags. We're like, wow, that's crazy. Who would have thought? Come back this first week in July that we were here on the 14th. Found it again in the mouth of Oak Grove. Who would have thought? Same fish, still sitting in the same area. Following week, Tyler Young from the DWR, he was out fishing for fun. Turns out, he was like, you know what? I know Oak Grove works sometimes, so I'm gonna go check it out. And he sends me this picture. He's like, do you recognize this fish?
Wow.
Same fish he caught again.
Slower.
Do you think they're replacing the batteries? Did they train them to do that?
I sure haven't, but it'd be awfully hard because it's still in there. But yeah, that fish has been caught 3 times. We've known about 3 times. It's probably been caught more and no one's noticed. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. But then again, about 5 weeks after each time it was caught, then we ended up having another catch about that time. So those time frames for our fish are going to be, for at least the June ones that have booked it out of here, they're long gone. They'll probably be around Christmas Tree Island or something if you're fishing over there. They might be starting to bite soon. September, you'll probably see the fish from this time, and we'll probably get a few tags coming out of this group. So, but if you do catch them, you can harvest those fish. I don't need them anymore because if they've been caught, they're definitely alive from the first time. If you are going to release the fish again, I just ask that you keep the tag on the fish. It's just a 100-pound leader that's going through the fish. If you harvest it, you can cut it. I'd like to have the tag back if possible. But yeah, my phone number's on the tag. Just call me, tell me where you are. You don't have to give me details like GPS coordinates, even though I'd really like GPS coordinates. But if you give me like a marker number, that works for me. That's good enough. But yeah, if you do catch them, you can harvest the fish. Just please call the number because I really want to know that. But yeah,
Do you want to know the length, weight?
I already have that stuff when I caught him. I'll have the length and all that stuff. I just need to know where he went so that I can compare that to where I last had him. And there's 2 tags that we haven't recovered at all. I'd really like to know if you caught one of those fish, but I won't tell you until you tell me, and then you'll definitely get a prize for that one. But yeah, so I think that's all I have time for. But yeah, thanks guys. To you. There you go.
So good evening. I'm Tim Grimmet, and I posted, I don't know if, how many of you folks have the app? You use the app, Striper Club app? If you...
85.
85.
85 people.
Okay. Wonderful resource. I certainly appreciate that since joining the club. So I'm going to talk about planer boards. I'm going to ask John to kind of go ahead and flip through. I posted in the app. I'm kind of a DIY person. I do a lot of things. Live bait fish up until a few years ago. Pulling boards, downlines. Kind of got out of it for a few years. Was kind of raised doing it with my father. He passed away. Kind of got away from it. You know, some of you folks probably been through things like that. Kind of wrapping back around, getting into it the last couple years. Decided I'd build some boards. Went and looked at them. They run you, I don't know, the ones I looked at were about $30 a piece. I thought, well, I like to run about 6 boards out my boat at a time. And I thought, well, I really don't want that kind of investment. So I said, there's got to be something else, and there wasn't. So I started looking. A few folks built them online. Thought I'd build some boards. So this was real attractive. This is probably the most attractive. $45.50 for 4 boards. I went to a retail store and said, how much is a board? I want 6. And the guy said, well, they're $30 a piece. I said, hold what you got. I think I'm good. So I started looking, started just sourcing stuff here and there. My wife was getting packages from Amazon, FedEx. What are you doing? She knew something crazy was going on. So this is pretty much what you need to build a board. There's a couple items, a couple different things you can buy, and I'll just start from the top. So your clips, I prefer these. You'll see these on some boards you buy out there. I would just do that with them as far as I'm concerned. These are my favorite clips. This is what I buy. This is what I use on every board I got. Usually what I do, and you can call me a cheapskate, I'll get on eBay, I'll put them in my bucket. Wait about 2 days until the seller makes me an offer. And then I buy 2 or 3 of them at the offer price, which is usually a few bucks cheaper. So I listed 14. I think I got a couple sets for like 12, 13 bucks, something like that. So I'm just kind of estimating here. Split key rings. My wife could not figure out why I ordered 200 key rings. 7, 8 bucks off Amazon, miscellaneous sizes. The smaller ones, I'll give you a little tip. I usually use those on my F-18s. Take those, put them on there, give you a little more action on when I go plugging in the spring. It's just what I do. I feel like I do better with that, so that's why I put them on there. Brass swivels, you can buy those. You probably got a ton of them in your tackle box. I think it's about 3, 4, 5 bucks. 5/16", 6 bolt, lows, nuts, all that kind of stuff. Pool noodles, be very careful. Something I learned. I didn't know. Depends on what dollar store or Walmart you go to. Your pool noodles come in different sizes, small, medium, and large. So you'll notice up here I got 2 different size boards. It depends on what you like, what you want to use. Some people don't like the big boards. I'm just being lazy. Some people like the smaller boards. Of course, you don't want to put a big noodle on the small board and the smaller on this one. It'll sink on there. So I'm just being lazy. I take one of these, I buy at Lowe's, which is the board in the background. And first, these were $20-some a piece. They marked them down. I've got them anywhere from 13 bucks to 17 bucks. Not depends on which Lowe's you go in. If you look online, 29 bucks. Go into Lowe's. I literally bought this a week ago for 13 bucks.
What's that material?
It's aluminum. So it's go to the next slide for me, John. So it's a diamond plate aluminum. So I don't care much for the diamond plate. It seems to work. So you'll notice on the board I got, the inside of the board, my boat's facing this way. This is on the inside. This is a right planer board. I use the smooth side of the diamond plate. Don't really have any issues with them. These are all tested, by the way. So that's the material. Start out. just kind of progressing. It'll come both ways. I bought it both ways at Lowe's. Come in the box, they come out of the box. Depends on the Lowe's you go to. That's typically how I mark it. It's a 12 by 24 inch material that you're working with. I typically mark it out 6 by 12. That's what this board is. If you want it smaller, of course, you could cut it. This board's 5 by 10. Yeah, 5 by 10. So you could cut it smaller if you want it smaller. Go ahead and hit me with the next slide. I'm gonna try to move through this. I'm gonna put a couple of these together and we're gonna put them on the table back there. Go ahead and hit the next one. That's just showing you the material. I'll leave this up here if y'all want to look. So this is how I mark my boards. And so I'm just saying this is going to be a right board, left board, right board, left board. I'm going to round the corners off. Can of spray paint, can of wax. It was in my shop. Grabbed it, put it on the corners, marked it. The reason I wrote these down as left, right is, again, I want this smooth side towards my boat. I don't want water catching that. And I'm trying to minimize the edge that I cut on this. So the top part of this is going to be rough. That's what I'm going to stick up in this noodle. I don't want my line on that rough part of that board. I want this smooth board on the bottom where my line's at. As much smoothness as you can get. So you will have to sand these, as you can see here. I got a grinder on there. I grind it down smooth. Take a little bit of sandpaper. You can get them really smooth. You'd be surprised. They'll be up here if you want to see them. Go ahead and hit the next one for me, John. So that's what they're starting to look like. Go ahead and hit the next one. So that's kind of my rough board. Go ahead and hit the next one for me, John. I'm starting to get there. So it's kind of hard to see here, but I'm marking with a pencil on these. Notice I left a little overhang with the noodle, my holes, and this is all here. Go ahead and cut your noodle, and it's sticking out a little bit above your board on each side. I don't know, 12 and 2/8, I don't know, 2/8, whatever you want to call it, 1/4, I don't know. But, so I'm marking it. So what I typically do is I'll take that noodle, split the noodle, utility knife, after I've cut it. I'll put that on the board and I'll mark, and I think I noted on the next slide, go ahead and hit me with the next slide, John, the measurements for these holes. So you've got a zip tie hole, zip tie hole, zip tie. There's your bolt. And then this one down here is just kind of a guess. Just leave yourself enough meat so that you don't rip out of the aluminum. We all know aluminum can be kind of fragile at times. But that's your holes. That's this rough board. Go ahead and hit the next one. That's what I'm transforming that board from this to this. You don't have to. I like it. I think it looks good when I'm done. Go ahead and hit me with the next one. Some Rust-Oleum. So my board, go ahead and hit me with the next one, John. So let's talk about this a second. So I start out with a 5/16" bolt. I just bought it at Lowe's. You can buy aluminum, buy stainless steel. I'm gonna take this bolt, I'm gonna cut the end off of it. Hacksaw, put it in the vise. I'm just cutting the end off that bolt to where it looks like that. I'm taking my sledgehammer and I'm flattening the end of that bolt down. Then I'm putting a hole in it. Put it back in my vise, put a hole in it. So it ends up going kind of progressively. This is what I want to end up with. So I want to end up with this clip sticking through off the end of that bolt. This is where my brass snap swivels come in. I just dig me out a couple keychains, put my brass swivels on there. Go ahead, John, to the next one. So I'm pretty much at this point. I've drilled my holes. Again, I just kind of pick a drill bit out that kind of matches my zip tie. No specific size, whatever you can get that zip tie through. This one, I kind of like this hole to be snug. I usually thread one of these bolts in there. So what I did on these bolts is I actually took some heat sink. I guess that's what that stuff's called. This stuff's called heat sink. I took some heat sink, put down on the bolt, heated it up. Just again, my preference, you don't have to do it. You'll notice this board is a working board off of my boat that I've caught fish with on half a dozen trips this year. And that's what it looks like after half a dozen trips. John actually mentioned something. He said, you have problems with the noodle. Being out in the sun, the noodle, kind of the styrofoam starts to break up a little bit here and there. I typically get a season out of the noodle. So beginning of the season, I tell my wife, I need some pool noodles from Walmart. Please buy bright colors. Brighter colors, the better. When you're out there fishing and certain types of boats that leave big wake comes out in the morning, they don't dodge these for some reason. Well, let me back up. They don't dodge these. If it's got a blue or green, or they just don't dodge them for some reason. They hit one of these, they'll never hit one again. If they see an orange dot floating this big in the water, they let off that throttle. So this size is good for some things. This is what I use. I don't use these. I use this. Every time I go out, I use the larger ones. But back to the noodles. So yeah, I just replace them. One noodle typically does 4 boards. So me being me, again, I usually go with orange on the right, yellow on the left. And there's kind of a reason for that. You take somebody out fishing with you who's never been fishing, and you say, I want you to watch those boards on the back of the boat. You're watching the fish finder, you're watching where you're going, and all of a sudden I got a yellow board on the right side of my boat, and they're supposed to be watching the boards. All they know is there's boards out the boat. But if they notice yellow's on the left, orange is on the right, and they see one of those yellow boards going up the right side of your boat, they'll know something's not right. They'll know there's a fish on that board. So that just helps me. I love to take my kids out, love to take kids out. People who's never caught a fish, absolutely love to take people who's never caught a striper out fishing. So this is kind of where we're at. We'll throw one of these together real quick. Go ahead and hit the next slide for me. So I'm going to thread this in here. Maybe. Might have should have checked this before I left, huh? Yeah, if it don't, we'll make it go in there. We'll make it go. There we go. And so, as you can see, I'm going to thread that thing on there now. Go ahead and hit the next slide there for me, John. So I'm going to use this for now, just to kind of save time. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on first, because when we put the noodle on there, it's going to be hard to tighten it up. So you got the option, you could use a lock nut, which is typically what I do just because I have 6 or 8 of these on my boat that I keep on there. It is a thought. The only thing you need to reverse that is just a wing nut. You could screw on the board, and then you could obviously point your boat in either direction and use it on either side of your boat if you happen to lose one. We'll go ahead and thread that on there, and I'm not going to tighten it up. I'll tighten it up in a few minutes. So I'm going to take my keychain with my brass snap swivel. I'm going to go ahead and thread that through, maybe. I just want y'all to see how quick we can throw one of these boards together. So I'm going to take my noodle, and I've already kind of pre-cut, and I'm going to put my zip tie through now. I'm going to go ahead and zip this one down for now, because there's something very important here. We don't have to, you notice I got these to where it's just starting to bend in there a little bit. I'm not torquing those things down. I don't want to cut that noodle inside there in half and the 2 end come off. So torquing it down where you're just starting to get a little bulge in that noodle. So I typically take this part. This kills me. This is something that kills me, guys. When I cut this zip tie off of here, I guarantee you I could cut a steak with that right there. How many times have you guys did that? It kills me when anyways, I'm gonna move on. I take this right here with my, done. Take that zip tie right there, and I'm gonna twist it back around. I'm not catching that on anything. One other thing you could do, I haven't had to do it, I don't do it on mine. It would look nice Again, just me. I'll probably take some of that heat sink and I'd probably cut enough to put on that bolt right there. Cut it, seal it down. That board is smooth. I have not had a problem with line getting jagged, getting roughed up, gnarled up. And that's what we end up with. Hit me with the next one, John. So that's the 4 boards made out of one piece of this. $45, $46 for 4 boards. I don't know where you're going to get 4 boards for $46. Nowhere. I haven't found them anywhere. I don't care if you buy the catfish boards. I don't care if you buy walleye boards. You're not going to get 4 boards for $46. I've been there and done that. Hit me with, I think we got, this is a picture of these boards being used. You can see, yeah, I do got an orange one up front, but hit the next picture, John. It's a bad picture. This is my setup. This is my boat. It's a hurricane deck boat. This is what I use. I can't help it. I love the bench seat. This is the boards running outside my boat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boards. And then I've got 2 rods in the front of the boat that are straight down with an ounce sinker on it. So I've got, John hit the nail on the head. The last month or so, I've been fishing 22 to 28 feet deep. That's what I'm running underneath these boards on my boat. Haven't had a problem. Seems to be doing pretty good. Again, a couple things. These are a lot more visible when you see these for some reason versus this. This is usually about halfway in the water on this board. Boats tend to see these floating a little better, just my preference. The second thing is, I don't know how many of you folks run boards. I don't know how many of y'all have had to deal with this. Your traditional board will have a strip of some kind of material that comes up that causes that board to float on both sides, right? When that strip starts to deteriorate or falls off that board, I'm left with some type of epoxy on that board. I'm trying to epoxy it and glue it. I rip it off, throw it away, and put a pool noodle on it. Every year, scrape that epoxy off. Try to put you a pool noodle on there until you can get it to float pretty good. Zip tight. Every year, just replace your pool noodles. Couple bucks. Keep going. Forget about it. So, anyways, we're going to put these together. We're going to put them on the table and give them away back there. A couple of them left and right. But so that's planer boards, guys.
All right, can you hear me? All right, my name's Mike Ward. Some of you recognize or know me. It's been a while since I've been here a little bit. We used to have a place here at the lake and sold it, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So it's been a little harder to get up here than it used to be. Used to be president of the club some years back as well. So definitely good to see it. And a lot of you hope to get a chance to catch up. Was asked to come talk about kind of rods used for striper fishing, the different types of rods we use, and also talk about custom rods and what you can do with custom rods and the benefits of custom rods besides just having a cool looking rod. Wanted to start off with some just hopefully this is kind of old information for many of you, but it's something I find a lot of people surprisingly don't know or get mixed up. When we talk about characteristics of a rod, there are a few ways that we kind of define a blank. What we call a blank, the stick part of the rod, right before the guides are on, the reel seat and all of that. But typically we define a rod or a blank by its length, by its action, and its power. And unfortunately, I think largely because of the commercial catfish guys, they've kind of blurred the power and action concepts a bit and confused things, but power refers to effectively the strength of the rod or the power that the rod has towards resisting the line being pulled or the fish on the other side. And we typically talk about power as light, medium, heavy, extra heavy. Then there's action, and action refers to where the rod bends along its length. How quickly it bends across the length. And when we talk about action, we talk about slow, moderate or medium, or yeah, I guess I could say moderate, fast, and extra fast. And then you've got the kind of in between there. And if we take, let's see, where's the, here we go. I think this one, this is from the one I'm remembering, right? Yeah, okay, this is a crankbait blank. At least the manufacturer is sort of deemed it a crankbait, but you know, the blank doesn't know what it's for. So that's the other question. When we're building custom rods, people say, well, is that a spinning blank or a casting blank? The blank doesn't know how you're going to build it. And it's not until you put the real seat on it and the guides on it that it becomes a spinning rod or otherwise. But effectively, crankbait rods are typically characterized by kind of moderate or moderate fast actions. You want them to sort of be fairly soft through the rod so that when you're fishing those crankbaits with the little treble hooks, you don't snatch the treble hook out of their mouth with a too fast of a rod. And let's see if we can do that. You can see it bends kind of fairly back about, what, at least a third, if not probably a quarter way down the rod before it's really starting to bend here. A fast action rod is typically going to start as bend about a third of the way down the rod, moderate fast about a quarter, and then a moderate or a slower action. A slow action rod is going to be almost parabolic through the whole rod. It'll bend down into the reel seat itself. You see that mainly with not necessarily old, but fiberglass rods being used for tuna on a boat offshore, that kind of rod, where you may have a huge amount of fish or a huge amount of weight pressure on the fish, and you need that shock absorber effectively in it. But when I think about how we select a rod for striper fishing, the primary first order factor is really, to me, is the action of the rod. And then we'll think a little bit about, honestly, power and or length are sort of the second order criteria to me from that point of view. And I guess just for compare and contrast, this is a fast action rod, 7'2", and you see there.
Worm rod, right?
For me, it's a jigging rod for striper, but yeah, worm rod or whatever, jigging, a whole lot of purposes in bass. But you see the bend of that's in that top third or even probably quarter in this case. So when I think about striper fishing, a couple of different techniques. If we're jigging, right, it's mainly going to be a vertical presentation. And when you feel that fish hit the jig, you want to let them know it quick. So that's where a fast action rod comes into play, because when you transfer your power into the rod, it's very quickly coming into the tip at that point. So you want a fast action kind of rod. If you're fishing with a striper stick, a ugly stick striper rod, with the fiberglass rods, you bend the thing and it bends all the way down to the water before you even tighten up on the line. That's not going to do you very good jigging. However, on a planer board side, you want some give. And these, I looked for a long time to find a planer board rod I like. I said, crankbait rods come close. The downside of a lot of the crankbait rods is they're designed for bass fishing, catching those, small little 3-pound fish, 3-4-pound fish. And, a lot of them just don't have the power in the butt end of the rod to stand up to a good hefty striper. On Smith Mountain, where stripers probably top out 20-ish on average. Occasionally you get the bigger one, of course. But, they might be okay, but you go down to Chesapeake Bay, you head over to Tennessee and go after some of those big ones, and they're just not going to have enough power. Let's say I looked around for quite some time trying to find a good blank, and one of my vendors who's out of Florida has some that he uses, or he has brought in. He uses them a lot for inshore rods, but they're a composite rod, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But it's got a really soft tip. You can see it's sort of a moderate fast type action, but it's got a ton of ass to it, or a ton of strength in the back end. And so what's nice about that pull in a planer board is, when the fish starts kind of pulling on it, there's a little bit of give, and they don't feel that board right away. Likewise, if you're pulling boards in a lot of wake boat wakes or whatever floating around. You ever have those where you're pulling it and you hit that wake and it pops the board off? You know, you got that shock absorber that kind of helps you there. So it helps, it really works nice. Now, I said it's a composite rod. I guess that's the other thing about kind of how rods are constructed. And you talked about, you mentioned a worm rod versus a crankbait rod versus a jigging rod versus a this and that and the other. In some cases, I think the blank manufacturers and the rod manufacturers put the labels on the same things just to sell you more rods, particularly for the bass guys, right? They need to have a rod for every technique specific that they use. But the reality is they are sort of built up differently. The blanks are built from either graphite, graphite or fiberglass or some type of scrim material, and they're basically built with flag, like triangular pendants of material, and laid up and then rolled. And they roll these up and then they wrap them in a cellophane under a lot of pressure, and then they get baked in an oven where there's the fiberglass or the graphite is what they call pre-preg. It has resin already in the fabric itself or the material itself. So when they bake it, that resin flows out and forms a unified blank. Now, most of what we use are hollow blanks. You can get solid blanks, at least for fiberglass. Can get them for graphite, but you don't typically see them used. Fiberglass is going to be the least sensitive of your rods, and then once you get into the graphite side, there's different grades or moduluses of graphite, and you've probably seen this with IM6 or IM7, IM10 labels on some of these rods, and every vendor kind of has their own scheme, and a lot of it's marketing, and a lot of it's, just like the lures, right? They don't catch fish, they catch fishermen. It's a little bit like that with rods too. But as a pretty universal rule is that number IM or RX or whatever that number goes up, it's a higher modulus. And what that means is the material is stiffer. The graphite is used in it is stiffer. And the higher the modulus, the more sensitive the blank is going to be. But the more stiffer and more brittle it's going to be. So that's one thing when we're out jigging in the wintertime and it's 30 degrees below freezing, I don't want to use a high modulus blank out there because just that cold temperature and all, it's just prone to your good chance to break your rod. The higher modulus also that stiffness, but the higher modulus is more prone to high sticking. Does everyone know what high sticking is? So for striper guys, we almost universally don't, but everybody in the bass, you're supposed to break that rod, right? Well, high sticking basically is, if you think about it like on a clock, the safe zone for a rod is basically, well, obviously below 9, but 9 to maybe 10 o'clock. As Grandma said, nothing good ever happens after 10 o'clock, right? So when you get above 10, now you're getting to a point where the angle of the rod to the water is going to beyond 90 degrees for your line to the water, and you're greatly increasing your chance of snapping that blank. Invariably, as custom rod builders or I'm sure rod retailers, and the guy comes in, my rod just broke. No, it didn't. You either high sticked it, or you banged it you slammed it in the car door, truck door, or you stepped on it, or oftentimes what happens, and we're really bad about this, guilty as this is striper fisherman. Where'd it go? Oh, the one in my hand, duh. That one didn't have it on it, this one did. This right here, these two are not mine. He'll remain nameless. I built these, so I had to smack them, but that right there, great way to destroy a rod. Won't happen sitting here. It'll happen when you catch that fish and the rod just broke. Because you're riding down the lake, that 2-ounce weight's in there banging against that graphite, and it's going to put a little stress factor in that blank. And it won't happen, like I said, it won't happen then while you're riding down the lake, but that stress fracture is going to show itself somewhere down the line later. So it's something to, just be cognizant of. That's not,
Show them how to do it the right way when you put your hooks away.
Well, the right way, the right way, honestly, as a rod builder, is going to be, if I can get it undone, is I can't see it. Yeah, he's got it. Yeah.
Can you turn the lights on up in the front there?
Yeah, we can probably turn those on since we're not using the,
There's two back there. In the end.
which way to do. Now, I see a lot of guys, particularly the striper sticks, the fiberglass rods, they'll do this. Well, catch yourself. Catch myself multiple ways. Sometimes you'll see guys do this with them. And well, he doesn't have much drag on it, but they'll bend it like that, and so where you're kind of keeping that off. That's not a good idea either. I mean, honestly, the right thing probably is to keep that weight, depending on how your boat's set up, keep that weight in a cup holder or rod, or just get it wrapped down here around the reel where it's out of the way, and then you can take that back up. Take that back up there or something like that. So,
Can I show you?
yeah, if you want to.
So a catfish guide on the James River showed me this, and they use like 6, 8 ounce.
Yeah, big old weights.
And so he showed me. I don't play with these expensive reels, so I don't even know what I'm doing with this reel.
It's not a Ching Chang Joe special.
So what I do is I'll put it up here for the time being, and I'll measure it out. That's not it. He's got a longer leader. Never put it in the guide. Put it on the, what do you call it? The support.
The frame.
The frame. See how I've got that down there? It's behind the reel.
Yeah. Now, obviously, if you're using rod socks, then it becomes an issue because your hook's up in the middle of the rod sock and things like that. So, other things how you have it. But just for general transport, that's certainly what I recommend. Because, like I said, that's probably the biggest likelihood of a rod breakage is something that happened not when you were fishing, and it wasn't the fish that did it. But yeah, so again, the different, just like golf, and you have different golf clubs for different distances you want to play. You have different rods for different distances and techniques and things that you want to fish with. So, I think when you're looking at planer bore rods, there's nothing wrong with an ugly stick striper rod. I mean, a lot of fish have been caught on those things, and they're darn near indestructible. But like I said, they're kind of a bit of a wet noodle, and they don't have a ton of power, and they certainly have no sensitivity if you're trying to use them for that kind of, for jigging purposes or something like that. Yeah.
Question, how about on the jigging rods, how much of a difference does the size of the eyes make?
So on a jigging rod, where was mine? Here we go. Okay, I guess the other thing on a jigging rod, spinning rod or casting bait caster, and that's really going to be your personal preference. For jigging, I like a spinning rod for multiple reasons. If nothing else, since you're sitting here doing this, and the line sometimes will loop up. With a casting rod, it'll have a habit of looping and getting caught and on it, so that's one thing there. And just, I tend to like the way a spinning rod balances and using spinning reel for jigging. In that case, the guide train should be sized to the reel, the size reel you're running. And there's sort of a rule of thumb formula that exists for the diameter of the reel to the size of the first guide, and kind of things out from there. Now, guide trains have sort of evolved over the years. Used to, and if you look at old surf rods, there was like what they called cone of flight, where you had a big, and then the guide just stepped down in size all the way out to the tip. It was literally like a cone going through. And the concept, right, was as your line came off your spinning reel, it would progressively get necked down and go on out. Fuji has done a tremendous amount of research, hard science research on how the mechanics and physics of line all works. And most of this is really mainly applicable to a spinning reel. It's less of an issue with bait casters, but they came out some years ago with something they called the new guide concept. And it was sort of a step away from the cone of flight to where you had, and it's pretty much, that's what this is effectively set up as, where you've got small runners at the top to what they call a choke point. And basically from your reel to the choke point is sort of reducing, and then at that point it's straight out from there. So by the time you get to the third, if it's a really long rod, maybe the fourth guide, you're choked down and gone on from there. Now, more recently, the last, 5 probably 10 years, I guess. They came out with something they call the KR concept, and it's these high frame guides with small rings. And so you've got the first high frame guide, a small ring, and then the next one is a much small, it's almost to what your runner guides are going to be. You'll go from like a high frame 20, which what that means is a smaller ring than this. This is a size 25. So it's a smaller ring, but the top of the ring sits about the same point, so that the way the line comes off, the angle it comes off your reel is the same, but it hits that and immediately is getting choked down. And then it hits a smaller choke, and then it's effectively the little ones all the way out. Now, from a striper fishing perspective, jigging for striper fishing, how much did the guides set up? That new guide concept, the KR guide concept, cast when it's set up right and matched to your reel size, cast incredibly well. Particularly designed around braid, although lighter weight monos will work. If you're going with a heavy mono, I'd probably stick with something that's built around the new guide concept, not the KR concept. But when the main thing from a guide, the eye selection size comes down to two things as striper fishermen. One, probably the biggest, most important factor, are your eyes still good enough to see to get the line through the eyes? Right? These are 6s. When I first started building rods, I felt like a 6 was small. They make down to at least a 3, and 6 and 5s are sort of the standard, if you will. Now the problem with a 6, anything below an 8, if you're fishing in the winter and below freezing temperatures, they'll freeze up on you really, really quick. 8s are pretty good about staying clean, but anything below. But again, how much the larger the guide, the more possibility for the line to flounder around as it's going out and rob you of distance. How much? You're probably talking fractions of percent, to be frank, in reality. The bigger area it can matter is the bigger the guide, the heavier the weight. The more weight out on your tip, it's going to impact your casting and your recovery of the rod as you're casting. Much bigger deal on fly rods where you're casting, but even on a bait caster or a spinning rod, you want as little weight up the tip as you can get away with. So as as a rod builder, there's always sort of a balance between as few of guides as you can get away with, but yet still having one that has good guide control and line control without, you don't want to, as you have a line pulled through, you don't want these sharp angles as it goes up the area. So there's sort of this balance, and a lot of it comes down to what we call static testing, where we'll tape the guides on and go outside and cast it and see how it feels. And and even particularly on the first stripper guide and things like that, you can hear it if it's not right. You'll hear it and whatever, so you can kind of play with that. So that's it. Now, where was the one? I went ahead of this one. Something that I'll do typically on my trolling rods or live bait rods and heavy saltwater rods is, I don't know if you guys can make this out, but is something wrong with this rod? The guide setup? Someone got drunk wrapping. I was drunk when I wrapped this, wasn't I? No. It's what's called a spiral wrap, or a Robertson's wrap, I think was the name, or an acid wrap. I think we know where the acid wrap name probably came from. But basically, it starts off on top, and within the first couple of guides, transitions the line to the bottom of the blank. And the reason you do that is to get rid of the torque of the line, because when your guides are all on top and the line's on there, that line's pulling down on those guides, and the line wants to go to the bottom of the rod. It wants to go down to the fish, but it's being held up above, so it's going to pull and cause the blank to want to twist over. And and depending on the size fish, you ever have it notice where when you're fishing, your rod seems to want to twist on you a little bit, and that's what's happening. It's the torque in the rod. And again, offshore stuff definitely, larger striper rods definitely too. So in this scenario, it totally takes that torque out. And it's one of those things people think is weird, or it looks odd, or it's just people don't like different, right? That's fundamentally the problem. That's not how we've ever wrapped. Rods aren't done that way. But you can for trolling type rods, but even on bait casters for bass, guys will do it, and there's no appreciable difference in casting distance. There's really only upsides to doing that way. So, so that's there. So those are sort of some fundamental basics about rods and selecting a rod for striper fishing. Let's talk about custom rods a bit. I started building custom rods. It was either late 19 or early 20. It wasn't pandemic driven to concur around the pandemic timeframe. And I started and I actually had wanted to, about 10 years before that almost, I looked at going to a rod building class and building some of my own, and timing didn't work out and I just didn't make it. And then I finally said, I'd like to build some nice rods for myself. I still haven't got my own set fully built yet. It's kind of how that happens when you go to, you start doing something. Then, could you build one for me? And it just turned into my second shift / weekend job, and chews up a lot of time. But the benefits of a custom rod are that it can be however you want it to be. It can be as decorative and personal as you want it to be, to as bare bones functional. These that I've built for Tyler, just basic black. I mean, couldn't get more bare bones from a build perspective. EVA grips, but it's. I don't like to use the word this is a performance build, because all of my rods factor in performance. The performance of the rod is the first and foremost. Just because it's fancy and pretty doesn't mean it's not functional and addressing performance. But certainly some people will just want a nice simple rod. Then you can go as crazy and outrageous and as you want to. Where like this one, it's got custom epoxy inlay grips with what we call a closed decorative. That's all thread work that's wrapped in, and then powder coated guides on the top for totally personalized out. It's one I did for a rod competition a couple years ago. So you can kind of do them however.
My son-in-law is a Dallas Cowboy fan, and you built one for me, and I gave it to him for Christmas. He loves it.
Yep.
It's a prized possession.
So and that's they can be themed. I did one recently built one for a wife that she was giving it to her husband when he was retiring as assistant chief of police in Burlington down near home. They make kind of great retirement gifts or whatever, very personal. Just got done doing it. Well, it's been a few months now. Early this spring, built a Goliath grouper rod for a guy down in Florida that his dad's nickname was Jelly Belly. And his dad passed away. He wanted a rod to kind of memorialize him, take with him. And this was a 6 foot, 130 pound class rod. I mean, Goliath grouper, those monster fish. But we did that. Every guide was a different color. I actually cast some faux jelly beans in clear resin and to put on the reel, down below the reel, or actually right above the reel seat. I mean, we did that it was like truly a one of a kind type rod, so kind of do that. But the other aspects, so there's definitely the decorative and personalization point of it, right? I mean, it can be as simple as your favorite school colors are red and blue, so we do red and blue colors on the wraps, right? It can be that simple to as crazy and involved as we want to be. But the other side is really tailoring it for you. For a spinning rod, do you like a full grip or do you want a split grip? When you're holding it, depending on your technique, different people like the rod to hit them at a different point in their arm. Right, so by custom, we can tailor it with where the reel seat sits here, or if we need to take a little off the butt end. A lot of cases people want an 8 foot or longer rod. These days with shipping costs, it's almost cost prohibitive to get a blank that's 8 foot or over. I mean, once you hit the 8 foot on a package, shipping it just gets stupid. It goes like 5x or something. The shipping costs more than a rod. It's just crazy. So, but that doesn't mean we can't, add a foot to the butt end on it and things like that if someone really has an interest for that kind of thing. If you're a kayak fisherman, or kayak angler, a lot of times they like a shorter butt end just because they're in close quarters and having to deal with it there. So that type of thing. On surf rods, I do quite a bit of fair number for down in, I can't put this one together because the room's not big enough, but down in Cape Hatteras, the Hatteras Heaver style rod, 13-foot casting rod, is very common for heaving out bait for what we call 8-and-bait rods. So basically 8 ounces of weight and a big chunk of mullet to sling it out to past the second bar for for catching redfish, big red, the bull reds. So do a lot of these. So one thing that comes in that factor is where does the reel seat fit, and that's very personal to each individual, kind of on both their arm lengths and just sort of what's comfortable to use your casting. So sort of the typical is about 29.5 to the butt on a 13-foot heaver, but you might want it 26, or some people may want it a little bit longer. So it's definitely that. And then the other area on the customs is you've got some favorite rod, right? This rod you've always loved. You just love how it feels, and you can't go buy that rod at the store anymore. Well, we can take that rod and put it on a deflection chart. Basically, it's got a mount where the rod's held, and then you load the rod tip up with weight, of various amounts of weight, and kind of plot and chart where and how it bends. And then based on that, can reference some information or find another blank that's very, very similar in action and power to that rod. So, we can't necessarily replicate that exact rod, but we can do something very similar. So, another benefit to that as well. So, if you're, it's a good, when I first started looking at this, part of it was, a way to stay involved with fishing when I couldn't be fishing. And it's just like people like to build pointer boards or build lures. You do these things sort of, it's fun to catch a fish with something you built, right? Lures, certainly that, and definitely so with a rod. Went down the Chesapeake Bay to the buddy and to pull in a 45-pound striper on a rod you built, just a cool feeling. So, there's that part of it. You can get into rod building. It's one of these things you can get in fairly simple, or you can go, all the way in. And it depends on your personality. You have to be careful because very quickly you can be all in. But, a lot of rods were built on a shoebox, literally a shoebox and a phone book and a teacup, where the spool thread was in the teacup and the thread ran through the phone book to give it some tension, and you had 2 notches in the shoebox, and you're sitting there on the lap in front of the radio or TV, wrapping guides on your rod. So you can go from that simple to what power lathe setups to have a motor that turned the blank, and all those kind of things. And obviously, like anything, the better your tools, the more flexibility and faster things can be, and all that. But one thing I did forget to mention, a lot of times, who's had issues with where you have some store-bought rod and next thing you know, the ceramics have popped out of the guides? Yes. So in fact, that's kind of how I started my first. Was I had a couple of Shimano Terramars that had the eyes that popped out. That gives ceramic eyes a bad name. A lot of people, I don't want those. I want the full metal frame guides. You have to understand, the mass production rods are using the cheapest possible components they can use, because it's all about the economics of that rod to them, right? So there's definitely different qualities of components, and like the ceramic insert rods, I won't say one never come out, but I was doing some stress testing on these. I powder coat, well, part of my rod business, I do coloring of the guides. So I do anodization on titanium guides, and then I do powder coating on stainless or titanium. And I wanted to do some stress testing on the powder coat. So I had a guide about like one of these and was hitting it with a screwdriver, something, trying to ding it and see if it would chip off, and didn't. And then brought out the hammer and started beating it with the hammer. Powder coat still didn't chip off. The guide squished and mangled. But the other thing was interesting, the ceramic didn't break or pop out either. So, these are the guides, at least the ones I use, that are from a company called Alps that are distributed by Batson here in the U.S. are very good quality rods. So it's one thing, don't be turned away by ceramic guys. Just know that, it's like everything in life, what you pay for is what you get in a lot of those things. So, and I don't know, I guess that was the main thing. I guess.
See that Chad Walmart, pay what you get.
You wonder why he has to buy some of the same things. Now, Chad did you bring it?
I didn't, I forgot.
Okay.
But Mike made me a 7'2" medium heavy jigging rod that I have turned into summertime fishing rod also. It's a worm rod. It's a heavy duty rod. I've got a heavier reel on it. I throw a 10 or a 12-inch worm in the summer. I jig 3/4 ounce jig head and fluke in the winter with it. It's customized for me. It's got my name on it. It's got Virginia Tech. It's got that intricate wrapping above the reel seat that he showed you on that one. It's got a hokey bird head on it. I mean, completely customized. And I love it. I absolutely love that rod.
I thought you were cheap.
I am cheap.
He was.
I've got about 14 of those Shakespeare rods for when my friends come. They don't touch that rod. They don't touch.
Somebody got a bit of a friends and family discount on that rod. Yeah.
Called Back Creek Custom rods, right?
Yeah.
They don't touch my Back Creek Custom. I'll show it to them.
That's right.
They don't get to touch it.
Well, I said, and there's all kind of decorative, like this one has it on it too. That is a weave. I know you can't see it. It's a weave, literally wove. It's a little NC State Wolfpack head. It's total thread by thread woven around into the rod. There's probably 50, 60 threads wide by about 150 along the way, where threads back and forth to weave those in. His rod he's talking about did a hokey bird on as well. So that's one of those things where I don't do a lot of these because to do that inch weave took 6-8 hours. So economically it's hard to they get done on special rods for family or things like that typically. But the guide wraps, these guide wraps, like a simple one like that can be done pretty quickly. To the one on this one here that wrap probably took 6 hours or so to do. So, but it's just one of those things where you can do as much or as little with it as you want. So if you have interest in buildings, getting into building, happy to talk to you about that and can point you to suppliers and tools and classes and online resources for it. If you're interested in a custom rod itself, happy to talk to you about that for certain. Striper Club members, I'll give a 10% discount to. So if you're interested in there, we're happy to talk about that. One thing I didn't mention too is I also do customized bait nets. So our 8 or 10 inch hoop bait nets that are 18, 24 inches long. I can paint those and put decorative color wraps and decals on them like that. They make really nice Father's Day, Mother's Day kind of gifts and things like that. Were a way to get that custom kind of item without having to jump all the way into a full-blown custom rod. So that's it. Any questions?
Cool. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, so we're going to move on to the end part of this. Joel, let's do the 50-50 first.
50-50 first?